Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. Well, welcome to this podcast. From speaking to clients for over 30 years now, the number one concern when they ever sit down and we start our meeting is that they should have started this process years earlier, 5-10 years earlier, that they've missed out on the latest property boom or the share market rebound. They've just missed out and now it's too late to start. When you drill down to it, it's just because we are all too busy with life. And so our finances get put to the bottom of the pile. I get that. I do this. I've been caught with the same. If you analyze it further, you really only do have 24 hours in a day. And with life, you can only outsource so much. You can't outsource your family, friendships, your spirituality, getting your health right. The only two things you really can outsource are your finances and your legal stuff, such as wills and power of attorneys and such. So why do people try and do it all on their own when you could easily outsource these last two? I suppose it's human nature and, New Year's resolutions. We try and do it alone. And unfortunately, if we don't have anyone helping us, they usually last only about 2 or 3 months. So in this episode, we're going to look at some of the myths that will stop us seeking help and that why it's never too late. Myth number 1. It's all about the number 65. And probably more importantly, once we turn age 65. And because this is for speaking to a lot of people over the years, they all see this magical number as by the time we reach 65, we need to have all our finances ready. We can retire comfortably and go on and enjoy the rest of our life. So it's probably worth just taking a step back and looking where this age 65 comes from, because really from people speaking to people in their 60s and are approaching retirement, it's never further from the truth. So if we go back to 1904, the government started Social Security and they set the age of receiving the pension at age 65. That makes sense. What may not be so clear is that the average life expectancy of someone at the turn of the last century was only 57. So the government saw that if they put the retirement age for Social Security at 65, the average person wouldn't actually receive it. So it was a good thing from the government, not so good for the people at the time. But over a whole century, that age 65 has stayed intact. And it's only been the last 10 years that the government looked at moving it. And at the moment, it's around 67. So, and more importantly, the average life expectancy is now in the 80s. So it's important that we look at this age 65 just in a relative sense as something to aim for so that financially you can be comfortable, but it's not the be-all and end-all. For example, I know a lot of people enjoy working and, so once they reach 65, why do they actually need to give up? They might want to slow down a bit, understandably, or take on a new challenge. But if they're still enjoying working, there's no reason why you should not keep going. Saying that, some people get to age 60 and want to stop, play golf, travel the world, and that's fine too, which is why we actually term it year R rather than retirement, because retirement does have sometimes a bit of a negative connotation, and it is different for everyone. We just, as I said before, want you to be financially in a position that you're working or you're doing what you want to rather than because you're being forced to. The other point I should make about this age 65 is that a lot of people look at, I want to get my money financially working as hard as possible for me. But up once I turn 65, you might realize, last thing I want to do is that I want to have a share market crash the day before my 65th birthday and the day I'm about to retire. And that leads us to myth number 2. I should move all my investments into conservative or cash type investments as I approach retirement. That also comes from a bit of history in that people retiring in the 70s and 80s, 1970s, 1980s, if they retired at 65 or whatever time, whatever lump sum they had in their retirement fund in superannuation, they then had to move into an annuity, and then that paid you a fixed income for the rest of your life. So that did make sense, that if you were retiring at 65, that if you had 200, 500,000 and you wanted to put that into an annuity to get whatever, a $1,000, $1,500 monthly income for the rest of your life, that it stayed at that 500,000 mark. You don't want a share market crash where your lump sum drops 30%, 50%, and you only have half that. And that's where this sort of comes from, this thinking comes from. Whereas, of course, in reality, we don't have those type of fixed annuities anymore, or very rarely. You can just have your investments working hard for you for the rest of your life. And you just draw down from your superannuation in retirement mode or retirement phase of your superannuation, and it pays you an income. But in the background, your money is still working as hard as possible for you. To give you an idea, if you're still concerned about not wanting to, if the money drops and for you to have to actually cash in some shares, which may not be the right price, what we try to do for a lot of our clients is have 1 to 2 years worth of living expenses in cash, so that if the share market did drop, well, you would only live off your cash component until the share market rebound, and you wouldn't have to, what they say, crystallize your losses of the share market, because they were left alone and you're only touching your cash. So I think I do understand the nature. We get older, we get more conservative, but when it comes to our money, we're actually going to be living longer than we ever have. And if you really want your money to be there for the next 30, 40 years, you're going to need to get it working harder for you. And therefore, it's worth spending some time and understanding why you would not look at considering moving your money into more conservative investments and keeping it more in high growth, good quality, diverse range of Australian and international shares that will keep growing, will keep paying a good dividend, and keep helping you while you live in retirement. Myth number 3. It's too late to be thinking about super strategies as I'm now in my 50s and 60s. I can understand this too, because you may see retirement on the horizon and you may only have 5, 10, 15 years before you want to give up work. And you have done very little with your superannuation to date. What is probably different is that probably in your 30s and 40s is you're paying off a mortgage. Your kids were going through school and the school fees and such. So I understand why you probably didn't take as much notice of your superannuation, what it was doing for you, and looking at superannuation strategies. And the reason I probably wanted to concentrate on superannuation is that once you do retire, and it's good always having income-producing assets, like an investment property, share portfolios, but having as much as you can under superannuation when you do retire is because it is the most tax-effective investment Australians can have. Because once you actually, post-60, put your money into retirement mode, it's all tax-free. It grows tax-free, and the money you withdraw is all tax-free. So it's really the only legal tax haven we have here in Australia. So it's important to understand why superannuation is important. But I get, as I said before, if you're now in your 50s and 60s and haven't really worried about it to date, there are other reasons. So what I would like to talk about then is there's probably 2 major issues you could probably, or 2 major things you could do when it comes to your superannuation if you now have some freed up cash. You can actually contribute part of your salary pre-tax, and it's what's called salary sacrificing. So your superannuation guarantee, close to 10%, is your employer's putting that aside, but you are allowed up to $25,000 a year to go in pre-tax. And definitely if you're in your 50s and 60s and can afford it, you should be having up to $25,000. And if you're a couple, definitely the $50,000 pre-tax. The other option is non-concessional contributions, and non-concessional just means it's not tax, it's post-tax. So if you've got some cash from savings, from whatever reason, you're allowed up to $110,000 into superannuation a year. And I should have also said the $25,000, that's also been indexed as of this last financial year as well. So you've got 2 opportunities there to increase your savings. And now that maybe you've got your mortgage under control, your kids have left school, and you have some spare savings, this would be something that I'd really aim to do, because yes, it's important to get your money working harder on where it's invested, but it's also important to get your savings as disciplined as possible when you see retirement in the rise in the next 5, 10 years, 15 years. When I'm talking about getting your money working harder for you, over 80% of people have their superannuation invested in the balance fund, which, as the term suggests, should be roughly about 50% conservative and 50% growth. Conservative as in bonds, term deposits and cash. Growth as in shares, property, and shares are Australian shares and overseas shares. Some balance funds aren't quite that way. Maybe they're 60% in growth rather than 40% conservative, but you understand what the title means. What I see is that as long as you have a long term, and that's more than 10 years, and let's face it, even if you're in your 50s, you are hoping to live for the next 30, 40 years. So you definitely have time on your side. You should be considering a high growth strategy, which is probably about 80 to 90% in growth compared to 10, 20% in defensive. What that means is, especially most superannuation funds, they're investing in a diverse range of high quality blue chip shares from here in Australia and overseas. And only have to look at the whole history of the share market. Yes, there's probably a downturn or a crash once every 10 years, but that means there's 9 years of really strong positive growth. And if I just look at the last time from 2008 to the drop we had last year, the share market went up probably about 200 odd percent for the 20% drop it had. So you're far ahead when it comes to having your money invested in really good quality shares. And so I would look at where my money is invested in a super fund and make sure it's working as hard as possible, not just now, but for the long term. Myth number 4, it's all about the money for retirement. And I get that. We want to financially be in comfort. Once we do retire, we want our money to last for our lifetime. We don't want to have to just depend on Social Security. And that's why we also, as I said before, call it Year R, because retirement does mean different things to different people. Some want to retire straight away, play golf, and some want to keep on working. Everything's correct depending on your circumstances and what you want to do. But we've talked about the financial up to now. What this myth is so important is that retirement or Year R isn't just about the financial, even though that's what most people concentrate on. Been many a time I've spoken to a couple who's come into a meeting and I asked, what does retirement look like for both of them? And when I ask them individually, I should say, sometimes it's really different, their answers, and they just haven't spoken to each other about this. So it's a topic that does need to be raised. And the other 3 things apart from financial that I usually like to see, or broken it down into, is you do need a challenge. You need to mentally be challenged to whatever you do. So even if you decide you want to give up work, that's fine, but you can't just sit down and be at home and do nothing. You will be bored so quickly, and you do need to work out, what are you going to do? What's the next big challenge in this next stage of your life? The second one is you do need to have your health and worry about your health. We are all living longer. As I said, the average life expectancy is now in their 80s, and there's over 500,000 Australians who are in their 80s or older at last count. So we want to have quality of life, not just quantity. So ensure you look at your health as part of retirement. And the last one is relationships. For a lot, as I said about that couple meeting, for a lot of couples, one may have been staying at home or only work part-time and the other person worked full-time. Some people have never actually spent a lot of time with each other. And that may sound quite flippant, but you are, once retired, you can now be living with each other 24 hours a day. And that can put challenges to any relationship. So you do need to know what is going to look like. Some may be fine. I've got my life in order. I'm going to play sport, croquet. I've got the local community. And some may want to travel. You just need to understand what each other what is looking for out of retirement so that you're both on the same page. Myth number 5, I need $1 million or I need to win lotto to seek financial advice, or it's only for the rich. This is another thing I often hear when you do the taxi driver test or water cooler conversation and ask people their view on what they think financial advisors do. In truth, it's the opposite. Advisors and coaches don't just see you when you have $1 million. They're there to help you reach $1 million and are with you for the whole life journey. The great thing today is that there is so much help on your money and retirement matters if you take a little time to look for it. There are, of course, the traditional advisors who, if you're looking for a comprehensive service, and as well as specialist advisors who may just be attached to your super fund or looking at specific areas such as retirement or aged care or estate planning. There are also retirement and money coaches like myself who specialize and provide a more cost-effective solution sometimes. There are online courses, podcasters, webinars. I just recommend you take some time and you'll be surprised how quickly you can get help and build your own money and retirement knowledge and start this journey. So that's probably enough from me, apart from one simple hint to help get your own money journey started. Buy my book is a very low-cost first step to help you get a better understanding of money and retirement. And yes, is a plug from myself. Just go to our website, themoneysandwich.com. So I hope this has been of help, as after 30 years as a financial advisor and now becoming a retirement coach and seeing hundreds of people, I'm confident that it's never too late to start. You can't change the past, but you can act now, make the necessary changes, and get your money working harder and longer for you. Best of luck with your own year journey. Thank you. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalised to your own situation, and past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we're trying to do here is provide tips, coaching, and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. Enjoyed this episode and want to hear more of A Bite from the Money Sandwich? Make sure you subscribe on your platform of choice so you automatically receive each episode as soon as it's released. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.